Up next is Andrea Cooper, and she will be discussing building carbon life cycle accounting. Andrea is a sustainable design and construction professional with a background in interior design, architecture, and construction management. In her current role as the VP of Building Impact with the International Living Future Institute, Andrea oversees the development, implementation, and validation of ILFI's building scale certification programs. Thank you.
Hi, hello everyone. Can you all hear me okay? Good, awesome. So I work for the International Living Future Institute. We're a registered not-for-profit, originally based in the Pacific Northwest. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about our zero carbon building certification and some of the tangential work that we're doing with that as well. So I'm Andrea Cooper. I'm the Vice President of Buildings at ILFI. I've been at ILFI for about 8 years now. Prior to that, I did a lot of sustainability consulting work here in Chicago with a handful of engineering firms, even at one point adjacent to Cyclone, which was a great experience. We were roomies for a while. So a little bit about ILFI. So our mission statement is to catalyze the transformation toward a living future of communities that are socially just, culturally rich, and ecologically restorative. This slide doesn't quite look right, but there was a nice image behind it. So our philosophy is to not just look for ways to be less bad, but to focus on what good looks like. And so to do that, we have a number of certification programs and some transparency programs as well. So the top three are our challenges. Those are holistic certification programs at the building, community, and the product scale. And then this line here, those are more focused certification programs, including zero carbon, zero energy, and core green building, which relates to the holistic nature of the Living Building Challenge, but has fewer requirements associated with it. And then Declare is probably our most well-known program. It's a product ingredient transparency platform. Just is organizational social equity, and Reveal is building energy use related. So specifically for our building certifications, this is how we usually talk about how they stack. So all 5 of these programs require a 12-month performance period to be awarded certification. So your goals are set, your building is built, and then you perform a minimum of 12 months and you provide that data at audit to prove that your building performs in accordance to the standards. So it's not just a design and construction-based standard. So fun fact about my transition slides, they all highlight zero carbon certified projects or registered projects that have publicly announced their pursuit of zero carbon. So focusing on zero carbon certification, there are 2 primary elements of the standard, operational energy and an embodied carbon. So focusing on the operational requirements, there's a requirement to reduce your energy use and then offset. So at the end of that 12-month performance period, you are also purchasing 100% of your electricity use as renewables. And we do not allow combustion, so it's all of the energy use within the building. So to break that down a little bit more, so for a new building, that would be a 20% improvement against ASHRAE 90.1 2019. And again, that's proven through 12 months of performance data. For a building renovation or an interiors project, that's to meet ASHRAE 90.1 2019 or a 50% reduction of energy use. And the primary standard for that is CBEX 2003. Or for a larger portfolio holder, it's actually looking back in their own portfolio to benchmark their own building use. All energy use is metered, and like I said earlier, all the electricity use is offset with renewables. There's also a fugitive refrigerant emissions requirement. This is new with our upgrade to 1.1 that happened earlier this year. So there's a maintenance plan to monitor and reduce refrigerant emissions. And then also there's an advocacy and commitment requirement that a member of the project team formally commit to reducing embodied carbon within the MEP industry. So on the embodied carbon side, so it's reduce, disclose, and then offset. So the reduction piece is a 20% reduction from primary materials, so that's structure, enclosure, and paving. And then there's a carbon cap for the total embodied carbon of the project. Right now, that's set at 350. It's not a firm cap. A lot of our projects are able to meet that 350 cap, but those that can't require additional analysis to show their hotspots and pain points and why they needed to exceed the cap. Almost all of our deep foundation projects are going to exceed that cap. So then they disclose that total embodied carbon, 100% of an offset, 100% of that is offset. Green E or red plus offsets are currently the only offsets that we allow, and that's specific to A1 through A5. So kind of going beyond our program requirements and what we do with our community and our industry knowledge. So one of our huge focuses is industry alignment. Kind of beyond a certification body, we have a huge focus to push the industry forward. Some of this was through the White House Net Zero Buildings definition work. So we participated both at the White House meetings to discuss the technical language and the rigor of the definition itself. We've consulted with the U.S. Department of Energy on feasibility of various requirements, what they're looking at for inclusion in the definition now, and then kind of their phased approach as that definition evolves over the next few years. And then also involved in conversations with the GSA on the implementation of the standards that would be allowed for use to meet that proposed definition. Another industry alignment piece, and this one's a big one for us, has been the ECHO project, so embodied carbon harmonization and optimization. So it's a coalition of industry leaders that came together to accelerate embodied carbon reduction in the built environment. And this is primarily through alignment of calculation methodology, definitions, and tools available. So it included ILFI, the USGBC, Carbon Leadership Forum was a big contributor, AIA, Building Transparency, some of the others that I have up here as well. So the goals have included consistency in measurement, reporting of embodied carbon, a benchmarking database at the building level, policymaker tools and knowledge building, and then inspiration with the goal of demonstrating progress. And I'm told that the schema from this group is released next week. So that'll be really exciting. Flipping things a little bit, so where we are a little bit more reactive is around legislative alignment around validated reporting. So this comes up a lot with our EU projects around the EU taxonomy. How does zero carbon certification align with the EU taxonomy requirements? Also, the California Assembly Bill 1305, so this is the Voluntary Carbon Market Disclosures Act. And so we have a lot of projects that are physically located in California, or the owners of those buildings are located in California. So as of January 1st, they will be held to California Assembly Bill 1305. So how does their carbon disclosure reporting align with that requirement? They're looking at it from the perspective of reducing risk, so third-party validation and making sure that there's transparency around those reporting requirements when they make those claims. And then not just local law 97, but energy efficiency requirements and how our standard maps to those requirements with the goal of having a validated program that meets multiple requirements so that our project teams aren't doing multiple energy runs, setting multiple targets and goals. The ideal is to have one toolkit that you can follow to achieve both your kind of local requirements and your corporate portfolio goals. So another way that through zero carbon, we help a lot of our project teams is through the volume process. This is for large real estate portfolio holders that pursue our certification at scale. And so kind of like why volume with ILFI? It's to reduce administrative burden, to help align between the certification requirements and their design and construction and operation standards, to reduce costs that are associated with analyzing and tracking different pieces of documentation and materials, and then putting a lot of the decision-making that's related to certification at the portfolio scale with the owner upfront rather than on a project-by-project basis. I think one thing that's different with ILFI for volume versus other certification schemes is we do work with the owner to customize the requirements. So we focus on the imperative intent and requirement statements, but then the exact pieces of documentation that are required are flexible at that point. So some of the example pathways that we've created for volume projects have been mapping complex local energy codes to our reduction requirements with the goal of having a single required energy model for each project. Factoring in district energy contributions on campuses, custom tools that have been built to support projects at the portfolio scale to simplify the analyzing of energy use or embodied carbon, and then standardized materials lists. This is primarily through EC3, standardized materials list for prototype construction. This is just a quick overview of that process, but it's a volume consulting step, and then all of that portfolio scale documentation is submitted, and we pull in an auditor to validate all of that information. Following the completion of the audit, the owner starts to register individual projects, and then we publish their documentation requirements. And my last piece today is around the next version of the standard. So we're currently working on our zero carbon expansion. The scope of this work is to add an existing building typology to that. So looking at B phase as well. Again, a 12-month performance requirement, refining energy reduction requirements and embodied carbon reporting requirements. We've started researching carbon offset types that send market signals toward more equitable carbon offsets for the market. The same with 24/7 carbon-free energy and a framework for evaluating renewable energy purchasing with a greater global grid impact. This isn't the only things. These are like the biggest things on our research scope. We do have 4 corporate partners on this work, and it's Amazon, JLL, JP Morgan Chase, and Prologis. They have been involved both in terms of information sharing. Their experts on staff are providing information to us, and they're also stress testing the standard as it's being drafted. So they're giving us feedback on how it does or does not work within their portfolio before we finish the draft. Our timeline for this is 2023 to 2024. So research, program drafting, and our expert feedback to open for pilot in 2025. So to formally launch a pilot for the newest version of zero carbon with an emphasis on those existing buildings at that point in time, collecting that pilot feedback for about 2 years, and then formally launching the program after that pilot process is complete and all of that feedback is collected. Ahead of schedule. But there's my contact information.
All right. Well, thank you, Andrea.